Welcome to the Be Magnetic podcast, where we ignite deep abundance and step into soul-led success without losing joy, freedom, or peace. This is for the woman who is bored, disconnected, and exhausted trying to win a game she doesn't want to play anymore. If your soul is calling for more flow, more ease, more magic, but you're not sure how to get there, get ready to become magnetic and create a life that is as juicy and abundant as you've always dreamed it could be. Hello, and welcome back to the Be Magnetic podcast. I'm so excited that we are getting into another incredible topic today, as we are talking about how shame is keeping a lot of women stuck, especially shame around feminine magnetism and feminine energy and just the feminine in and of itself. So if you have been feeling the pull to lean deeper into a softer, more aligned way of living and leading in your life and your business, but it kind of has been hard to shift and you felt yourself fall back into old habits or just, had a lot of fear and limiting beliefs come up, and this episode is for you. I wish, honestly, that someone had told me as a teenager that I get to do things differently and I get to be different, because like probably a lot of people, I grew up in a very male dominated society, and not just society but an environment. So I have two younger brothers and most of my parents' friends do have boys as well, and so as a very little child I already kind of learned that it could be better to be a guy. That started with the first time I got my period, for example, and I felt so much shame around it. I was always the oldest, and so I did get my period and it was really uncomfortable because I had no one to tell. There was no one that I could say what happened, because obviously no one had experienced what I was going through, and so I just carried it all by myself. But it did make me feel very alone, and it did make me also wonder why does this have to happen to me? As women, we just don't have the physiques, right? Or we have to work extra hard to get the same kind of shape and look that men do. Obviously not all women, it also depends on our very unique body type, but most women have to work a little bit harder to shred, in quotation marks, than guys do, because as women we do naturally have a higher body fat percentage. And that was another coincidence where I was just, not necessarily hating to be a woman, but where I actually didn't really see the advantage of being one either. And then obviously within society we are very trained to just be productive, to do the stuff that people tell us to succeed. I did really thrive in that environment because as a generator and a naturally ambitious person, I actually fit very well within that system. But at the same time, I was made believe, or started believing, that the feminine energy is weak or less good or useless even. And I lived with those belief systems for a really long time until I did sort of burn out. So I didn't have a clinical burnout or anything like that, but I got to a point where I lost my period for multiple years because I was just pushing myself so hard, and because I was going against my body's wisdom. And then I did feel just very exhausted and that was for me the moment where I realized, okay, maybe the way I'm living isn't really how I'm supposed to live, or maybe there is something that is a way of living that's a little bit healthier for me. And that's kind of where I started to really question how I was showing up, and also the intentions that I held for how I was living and leading myself through life. And that is kind of when I started to then heal some of the shame and the guilt that I felt around my own feminine magnetism and around being a woman. So a lot of women do carry a lot of shame around their ambition and around their feminine energy. I think with the ambition, it does slightly shift because we're being way more unapologetic around being ambitious. But what I think is still, like, there's still room for improvement is around being ambitious while also having this deep desire to want to lead with your feminine energy, right? So we've been so good in just meeting the men where they are and basically becoming little guys where we just step in the footsteps of the successful men before us. We apply their strategies, we do the things that worked for them, and that brings us great success. And I'm so happy to see so many women step into successful roles and really become leaders in our society, in our world. But most of them still do this from their wounded masculine, right? They still do this by, again, following the proven strategies and just working hard and applying their logic and like doing all the things that help the guys before them get to these places. And there's per se nothing wrong with that, but the energy within our world is so out of balance because there is not enough feminine in how we live and lead as a society. And so I wish that more women could just love their ambition, could just stand tall and say, yes, I want to be successful. Yes, I want to make a difference. Yes, I want to get into like a leadership position, but also acknowledge it and allow themselves to do that with their own way, with their own strengths, right? Instead of just copying what everyone else is doing. And the reason most of us don't do that is because there is so much shame around feminine magnetism, because for so long we have heard it's weak, it's less than, it's useless, it's not productive, you can't be successful by like being a woman basically. And that is just not true. So the first thing that I kind of want to touch on is how do we actually identify if we carry shame around our feminine magnetism, or how does that actually look like? So I think the biggest sign really is that if you are still leading mainly from your masculine, if you're still putting your logic over your intuition, or if you're still pressuring yourself, forcing yourself to be productive, to show up regardless of how you're feeling, or if you're still like kind of pushing yourself really hard, these are all signs. Or even if you're like in competition, if you're trying to be better than someone else, or if you're trying to win at all cost, if you're trying to prove yourself, these are all signs that you're still in your masculine energy. And the fact that you're still in your masculine energy, if you have tried to approach life and business more from your feminine and it hasn't really worked so well, and you've kept falling back into these old habits and into like the comparison and the competition and the proving and the forcing, then it's likely because you have shame around it. And oftentimes the shame, like most unconscious emotions and beliefs, they're unconscious. So I want you to maybe just take a moment, if you can, if you've got space. If you're driving, of course, please don't do that, but just take a moment, and or you can still do it, but like with your eyes open and still being like focused on the road. So just take a deep breath for a second and just tune in to your body, your heart space, your womb, and just feel there for a moment how it would make you feel if you were to just really soften. Just really say, okay, I don't care about competition. I don't care if I win. I don't care if I'm better than this person or that person. I don't care if I ever succeed, if I ever prove them wrong. Like, if none of that mattered, if you would let that go right here, right now, how would that make you feel? And if that makes you feel icky or like frustrated or any sort of like fear, worry, or if you just have like total resistance towards letting that go, and you're like, no, but like I can't do this, and there's like so many responsibilities and like all of that, that's a sign that you have shame around your feminine magnetism, and that you don't fully believe that you can actually be successful leading with your feminine energy. Another way in which the shame around your feminine magnetism can show up is that you are, again, either very much so still in your masculine, or you're very much so in your feminine, and you don't allow yourself to pursue your goals and your dreams and your ambitions anymore, where you're like, okay, I fully surrender, I fully let go, and I'm just like being a woman now. And you therefore lose your sense of ambition and your sense of drive and your desire to accomplish something in a world, because that's also just another way of hiding and of kind of like feeding into the belief that you can't really be successful when you lead with your feminine energy. But I do also believe that the fact that you are here listening to this episode, you already probably have an underlying sense or an intuitive idea that maybe you do carry shame and guilt around your feminine magnetism. Another way in which this does show up is like every time, for example, you do lean a little bit into your feminine energy, every time you allow yourself to do something differently, or to like let your intuition guide the decision that you're needing to make, and then you second guess, and then you're like question yourself, and you're like, did I really do this right? Or even when you're like, you know, this happened to so many of my clients and to myself as well, when I made the transition, when we are like starting to kind of finish, when we are done, and we are like, before, for example, we've approached content creation from this really like masculine energy of like, we're pushing through, we're getting things done, we're doing what needs to be done, and then all of a sudden we start shifting to a more of like a feminine approach where we just let the inspiration flow, and then maybe we feel complete of the 3 posts, and we're supposed to like create, I don't know, 6 or 12, but we actually feel complete, and there's nothing, like no inspiration, no idea, no thought flowing anymore, where in the past we would have pushed through and just, you know, created the 6th post because we said we're gonna do that. And then when we make the shift, we start to stop after 3. And then our mind goes like, but no, I have to, like, what if I post less? And like that kind of thought process, that's also a sign that you're not fully ready to embrace life and business from your feminine energy, because there's shame around it. And the reason why we carry shame is because literally just society made us believe that. And I've been reading a really interesting book. In this book, the author talks a little bit about how basically there is like dark matter, so like an energy darkness in itself, which tries to survive. It doesn't have like a full consciousness or anything of itself, but like the darkness in itself, it tries to survive, and it tries to keep us within, as a society, as a population, as a world, within the masculine, because that means we're like, the world is out of balance, and when the world is out of balance, it's weaker. And so you can have your own theories, you can believe whatever you want, but for a really long time, we have been conditioned to just stay within our masculine, and we've lost the feminine touch, which kind of brought our world out of balance. Because if you look at it, like war, comparison, competition, like all these things are very masculine traits. And if we were to approach life a little bit more from the feminine, a lot of the war and the competition and like the battles and all of that wouldn't really happen, because that's not the feminine principle. So it's not your fault, and it's really no one's fault, because we're just like, our ancestors, the people that came before us, they have also just acted from an unconscious mindset, right? And so it's not like anyone wanted to do you any harm or did this on purpose. It's just how the world was built so far. We here right now get to make a difference, and we get to make the difference for the women and even the men that come behind us, right? The children and the next generations. And we get to really shift that, and we really get to now write a different story and show that we can actually be ambitious, but we can be successful, but by staying true to who we really are and the nature and the core of how we are wanting to lead and achieve success. So how can we actually release the shame? So with shame, as with every other emotion, we first of all have to do some emotional releasing. And you guys know I'm a big fan of rapid resolution therapy. This is what I apply also with my clients. If some client comes to me and has a lot of emotional attached to their belief or just their situation, then we will also always do some RT to kind of release that emotion and let go of the energetic charge. So you can also do this through journaling, through EFT tapping, through just talking about it. There is a lot of different ways in which you can actually release the emotional charge around the shame that you're carrying. I did find RT to be the most effective and the most quick and the most complete way of releasing the emotional charge, because I found that sometimes with other techniques there's like residue energy, and so you will have to do it more times to actually get rid of like the emotional charge. And with RT, what I've noticed is like it's basically completely gone after you've done the exercise. But anyway, it is really important to do the releasing of the emotional charge first, because you can't shift a belief and you can't shift your actions or habits if you still have negative emotions towards it. If the emotional charge is so strong, your unconscious will always lead you to doing what feels the safest and the most comfortable, because that is just how it is wired. It's wired to protect us, it's wired to keep us safe, it's wired to make sure that we are well. And if something doesn't feel safe and doesn't feel well, good to the unconscious, it will do everything in its power to prevent you from doing it. And at this point, it does not feel safe, it does not feel good for your unconscious to be leading from your feminine energy, or even be leaning more into this, because you've literally been taught that it is unsafe, that you're not going to be liked, that you're not going to be prized, that you're not going to be accepted or appreciated if you're leading from your feminine energy. So we gotta release that emotional charge first. And then when we have released this emotional charge around the shame, we can actually look at it from a more objective perspective and look at, okay, is it actually true that I'm not being liked, that I'm not being appreciated, that I can't be successful? And like all the stories that we tell ourselves around why it is bad to lean into feminine magnetism, right? And we can look at them more objectively, and we can see, okay, actually it is so beautiful to be able to lean more into my feminine magnetism, because then maybe my partner is stepping up a bit more as the guy that I really want him to be, or maybe I find more like friends and women that actually support me instead of like trying to gossip and like battle each other, right? Or maybe I just feel more relaxed and more rejuvenated and more aligned, right? So we can find all the ways in which stepping more into our feminine energy actually serves us, and also how it's probably not really true, right? There's so many women already, and you've probably experienced it also already in your life, where you had moments where you led with your feminine energy and you were appreciated for it, you were prized for it. Like people went up to you and said like, wow, this was incredible, I love that you just relaxed so much about it, or I love that you followed your intuition about it. And we need those proofs to then eventually find the courage to act differently, because we can do the releasing of the emotional charge and we can do the rewiring of the beliefs, but at the end, what really cures the shame is to start showing up differently. And of course, you want to get clear first of how you want to show up, And I think probably you already know. But then we have to kind of find the courage to actually do things. And we don't have to start big. We don't have to like throw everything overboard and like shift the entire business strategy. But we can actually start small by saying, okay, maybe this time instead of forcing myself to do all 6 posts, I will just finish when I'm done. Or I will just force myself to do 1 more post instead of 3 more if I felt finished after 3 posts, right? Or you can start making one tiny decision with your feminine intuition instead of like the biggest decision, right? And so you start acting small, you start creating more of the proof that it's actually safe and it's actually good for you to lead with your feminine magnetism. And that is really it. And we do this over and over and over again. And every time we take an action in alignment with our feminine energy and there is the shame showing up again or the guilt showing up again, we do some more releasing of the emotional charge. We sit a moment and like regulate our nervous system, and we're actually telling ourselves how this is safe, how this is good. We're conditioning ourselves to see the positive in this. And then with time, you will rewire the neural pathways and you will create the proof that it is actually safe, and you will create the results. And as soon as you can look, you are living and leading with your feminine magnetism. It really often is just the awareness and the acceptance that you have still shame around it and that it is hard for you to let that go that will in fact make the shifts. So if this hits home, you can grab my free Embody Her guide, which is linked below. And I've created this guide specifically to help you embody the version of you that lives and leads with her feminine energy. So we are going to do some clarity work where we actually get clear on who she is and how she shows up. We are also getting clear on like what needs to shift within you to actually embody her, and we're going to do like a really powerful embodiment exercise in that guide as well that really helps you to step into this version of yourself. And I think that guide is so beneficial for you as you're working through your shame, as you're working through that resistance towards leading more with your feminine energy, because you're every single day embodying more and more the woman, the version of you that is really leading with her feminine energy. And if you want to go deeper, if you know you need some extra help with that, then you can grab one of my unbecoming sessions. It's a one-off session where we together will gently unravel the parts of you that are built on pressure, performance, and perfectionism. So basically the wounded masculine. We will unravel that and will then start to embody more of the essence that you really carry and release the stuff that no longer fits so that you can actually step into a more aligned way of living and leading. There is also a link below in the show notes with more information and a link to book in that session. And if you want to like just continue listening to the podcast, then there is a couple episodes that I can highly recommend you. Episode 158, How to Romanticize Your Life, and 161, No One Tells You About Becoming That Woman, and 162, Stop Leading with Strategy, Start Leading with Energy. All these episodes dive deeper into what we talked about today and just share different perspectives on it and help you really to embody more of your feminine energy in life and business. And that being said, I just want you to know that you deserve to feel free of shame and guilt of being who you really are, and you deserve it and you're capable of getting there. All you have to do is follow the steps that I've given you today, and you will see soon you are able to really lead with your feminine and achieve success nonetheless. Thank you so much for tuning in today, and I will see you soon.